Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our last webinar of 2018. We're today running a now annual session in which we give tips for companies new to export about how they can succeed in international trade next year, while also hearing from a couple of success story exporters as well. My name is William Barnes-Graham, and I am the Senior Content Editor at the Institute of Exports and International Trade. Open to Export is a free online service helping small businesses get ready to sell overseas through our step-by-step articles and guides, regular webinars, our Export Action Plan tool, and our quarterly competitions. You can find out about all of these on our website at www.opentoexport.com. Open to Export is powered by the Institute of Export and International Trade, the UK's professional membership body for traders, endorsed by the World Trade Organization and the International Chamber of Commerce as a small business champion. We offer a unique range of individual and business membership benefits, education and training catering for beginners through to master's degrees, and an always exciting and prestigious programme of events celebrating UK businesses' exporting achievements. We will be running a live Q&A at the end of the session, and you can ask questions at any point during this webinar using the question box on the control panel to the right-hand side of your screen. Today we are joined by three great speakers, including two great case study exporters. These are Nikky Hall from Polkadoodles, a former Export Action Plan competition finalist, and we also have Nik Ravenhall from Atom Brands, who are Queen's Award winners in international trade. But before we hear about their businesses and their experiences in trade, we have our very own Leslie Batchelor, who will talk to you about how the Institute of Exports help you to take your first export steps. Over to you, Leslie.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And yes, the last one of the year, so we better make this a brilliant one to talk about. We're going to start off by calling this the Buccaneers Guide to Exporters, and we're actually just going to explain briefly a little bit about the International Chamber of Commerce WTO Small Business Champion, which is an award we were given, and you can see me with the Deputy Director General of the WTO and Arnie Mielkin, our young president, receiving this award. It's been a great privilege to actually be able to work with countries from as far away as Mongolia and Zambia and Peru, who all came along and joined our great competition. We're going to talk a little bit more about how the competition works a little bit later on. Next slide, please. So the international competition starts off by being run by the Institute. The Institute is a professional body, we've been that for over 80 years, and we provide qualifications and training in international trade, also opportunities to meet up with members and to actually use our helpline. Open to Export is part of that process. Next slide, please. So membership benefits are quite simple. It's all designed to help fit in with your business and your individual needs, gives you access to a technical helpline. We have professional recognition for members who are individuals, running a CPD program so you can stay current and up to date with all the issues that are going on, both within the disciplines of international trade and the news and the changes as far as things like, I'm going to say that word, Brexit are concerned. We offer training discounts to those who are members, discounts on networking events, or they're often free. Each communication we have of free of charge. That goes from a daily bulletin, our online content, and a journal which we produce every 3 months, actually creating a very, very interesting coffee table style journal that can carry a lot of information about our events and news that's going on. We also have a job board, which obviously we don't want you to use too much, but obviously it gives you an opportunity to see what else is going on in the rest of the industry. Next slide, please. So we have three different levels of membership as far as businesses are concerned, and that's a small business membership, which actually can go up to 15 employees. You'd have to have obviously 2 business references to join that, but it also gives you 2 free affiliate memberships. We're actually including next year a new new vehicle, which is called the Terms and Conditions for small businesses, and that's going to be enabling them to actually trade more effectively and be part of the process, leaving themselves free to actually create contracts which they know will stand up in law internationally as well as in the UK. The next level we have is business membership. If you have to choose that option, you're normally employing between 16 and 50 employees. That gives you 4 free affiliate memberships. It also starts to give you more help on the helpline. It also gives you benefits as far as the discounts on training is concerned. Corporate membership package is much more for the larger companies, and this is where they engage with us a lot more deeply in issues around lobbying and getting involved with decision making and trying to influence the new way of doing things. But this presentation, I'd like to talk some more about the Buccaneers Guide to New Markets, which is a new one we've launched. Next slide, please, Ian. So the Buccaneers Guide is a new market package. It's only £500, and it's really to encourage everyone to start looking at new markets and new ways of moving forward. As we move away from the European Union, it would be good for us all to start thinking about how to trade internationally. And we do joke a little bit about calling it a Buccaneers Guide because we know that the people in the Foreign Office and DIT often say that there aren't enough Buccaneers in this country. So it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. We do know that Buccaneer stands for pirates and vandals and all that sort of thing, so please don't write in. We actually also think that this is a great way of helping businesses to start taking their next steps in international trade. Next slide, please, Ian. So this membership gives you access to a wealth of information that we have. We often have new business guides doing business in certain markets, and they will also be part of the information that's going through for you into a new market you're looking at, backed up by training and our advisory services to help make sure that you gain as much information and skills necessary to actually get into each new market successfully. Next slide, please. It also gives you the benefit of being part of the small business membership, which gives you a lot of help as far as consultations concerned in completing the documentation, which is going to become increasingly more important, and most importantly, giving you information about practically and achievable plans that will take you into these new markets. Growing sales quickly might sound like an ideal, but if you actually get a structure in place to deliver this effectively, we think that you can do this quite quickly. Next slide, please. We also have part of this is the export strategy consultation, and one of our trade experts will sit down and go through the action planning tool with you to help you produce this online tool, which actually will then be able to form the framework for the actions that you're going to take as you go into the new market. When I say quickly for a new market, I do mean that it's going to take you between 6 months to a year at least to get into a new market. So this is why the planning is so much more important than perhaps people put the emphasis on at the moment. New slide, please. We will carry out bespoke research for you, as well as giving you the general research that we've done for each country, and that will start to help you gain more and more information about doing business in that country, understanding the cultures that you're going to meet, understanding the issues that you'll face as far as legislation, compliance, and in some cases sort of a non-tariff barrier. And by that we mean the blocks that can be put up. It's quite appropriate that North America is highlighted there, because they quite often have sort of technical certificates and issues that stop you from actually working very well in that country. They act as barriers, but they're actually not legal in the same sense as the tariffs or barriers that might stop you from doing business. Do talk to us if you want to have any more information about any of this as far as new business memberships are concerned. Next slide, please. The doing business guides I mentioned earlier, we've got them for around about 60 different countries, and we're adding to these all the time, so there's an opportunity to see these new products. Also, as I say, the research that we do is available to any of the new business Buccaneer guides. New slide, please. So the technical help line that we run, this is a great service. It's going to be probably used an awful lot in the next 3 months. Any questions that you have as far as your documentation is concerned, how a tariff works, what the implications are of any of the compliance legislation that comes through, do talk to us. We will always help you. And if we can't answer, we certainly know the right person who can. Next slide, please. So the Buccaneers Guide in full gives you preferential member rates on our world-renowned training courses, full communication package, that's the daily foreign exchange bulletins, our monthly e-newsletter and our quarterly journal, as I say, World Trade Matters, which is a lovely, lovely piece for your coffee table as well as for reading late at night. A full program of events where your business is able to network and meet other professionals and other experts. Feedback to government that will help you make sure that issues that are impacting on you are heard and that we can try where possible to find solutions to them. It'll give you 2 free affiliate memberships. The logo will be featured on the website with a short profile, which also will help understand and gain a little bit more exposure for your business, both here and internationally. And the IOE IT business logo, which you'll get to use on company letterheads, emails, and social media accounts. Next slide, please. Right, so the importance of having a plan. I mean, this does sound a little bit trite, and you must forgive me, but you know, it's going to help you decide which market you really should be selling to, so you can actually put your efforts into the right market right from the start. It's going to help you understand what you need to know to sell into that market. It's going to help you which routes to take into that market, whether it be both logistically and also about the sales channels that you need to explore and that actually exist in that market, and basically how you're going to deliver your offering successfully into that new market. Have a plan is the best way of doing that, and this is why Open to Export in particular won its status as a small business champion. So please, let's try and use that. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you get onto the Open to Export website, and we've just got some slides here just to show you how it is. If you click onto the action plan tool as highlighted there, it will start taking you through the journey of getting started, selecting a market, selecting a market and the rest of the journey. Reaching customers, sorry guys, pricing and getting paid, and the delivery and documentation. This is we think is the journey that everyone needs to go through to actually get through here. Next slide, please, Ian. Okay, once you get into the action plan, you work through these 5 steps. There's a video, and you can see the chap there. If you click on him, he'll tell you exactly what you're supposed to fill in and how you're going to do that. Each page will give you a question, something you have to look through. In this case, it's how you're going to prioritize which offerings to sell abroad. A lot of businesses, unfortunately, feel they have to sell every one of their products, which actually leads them to a lot of confusion and often gets them into trouble before they start. We use the Boston Consulting Group so that you can be sure you're only going to be selling your good products, your best products, and most importantly, ones you can support and don't cause you a lot of issues internationally. It will show you about the next task that you go on to, and it will take you through the journey, completing ideas and giving you useful resources to finish the section effectively. Next slide, please. Right, at the end of that, you have an opportunity to set your actions. And in this case, we've written that we're going to contact some distributors. And you'll see there's a drop-down calendar that you can click onto and find a new date in which you can actually start planning your time more effectively. This, in the end, will bring you to a final report. Next slide, please, Ian. Which looks like this. And this report will walk you through all the actions that you've talked through on the different stages of your journey. I think it will also, the next slide too, Ian, will take you through to an action plan that's actually completed. So our next action plan, the deadline for entries is the 25th of January. It's a chance to win £3,000 towards an export plan, and the final showcase is going to be in
start of March now.
It's in March now, and we don't know exactly which day. Eulaher is in London, and we'll have to come back to you with the exact date because we're still just confirming with them on that. Do take part. If you know anybody who might be interested, it's a great journey to go on. And most importantly, it starts giving you some structure as to some of the things you don't understand and some of the things you're not aware of. So please do start your action plan now. Next slide, please, Ian. So I'm going to hand back to William, who's going to hopefully introduce.
Thank you, Leslie. And yeah, as Leslie noted, the next competition, we've had a slight change of the date of the final and the location, which we will be updating everyone about over email, but it's now going to be in London at the start of March, and we will let you know the exact date when that's confirmed. But yeah, thank you, Leslie. Really great overview of how the Buccaneers Guide to Export will help new exporters take their first steps, and some great insights into the competition as well. Which brings us on to our first case study, Nikky Hall from Polkadoodles, who will talk a little bit about her experiences entering one of the previous competitions. Over to you, Nikky.
Thanks, William. Thanks, Leslie. Yes, I'm the co-owner of Polkadoodles Limited, along with my husband Chris, and we became involved with the Open to Export competition back in 2016 now. And it's just been a really great part of our export journey. I kind of stumbled across the website when I was doing some research, and just decided to complete the Open to Export plan. And really, I'm so glad that I did, because it kind of led on to lots of other things. So if we could have the first slide, please. So we are a very small company. There are literally 2.5 of us. We have a part-time member of staff. But we design and manufacture craft products, such as photopolymer and rubber stamps, which are used really for home hobbyists who primarily make handmade greeting cards. We have a range of various different products, including paper products, which we try and make as many of as possible in the UK. And our export journey really started probably about 5 years ago, but in quite a small, low-key way. And kind of joining in with the Open to Export plan really kind of helped us to kind of cement some of our ideas and provide some structure. Next slide, please. So our current exports, basically we have 2 or 3 different platforms. We have our main website, which is very much us selling direct to our consumers, and 45% roughly of those sales are actually exports, and 40% of those are actually in the US. We also have a wholesale website, which is completely separate, where we're actually selling direct to retailers on a wholesale level globally, and 90% of those exports, of those sales are actually exports. We only sell about 10% into retail in the UK. And of those 90% that are exports, about 80% of those are actually into European stores. And then also we have a distribution network. We actually have 3 distributors, 2 in Europe and 1 UK distributor, that also accounts for another part of our business, which is growing hugely at the moment. And in addition to all of these different platforms that we have, we also trade into the US and export to the US directly via a US partnership where we actually license products to them. So they actually work very closely with us, and we sort of have a joint manufacturing partnership with them, and they actually sell direct to consumer in the US via a TV shopping channel, which is the 2nd largest channel in the States. But they also have a wholesale platform, so they are also selling our products for us as a 3rd party into US retail stores as well. Next slide, please. So, as I said, I actually stumbled across the plan kind of by accident during some research. And as a small business, I think sometimes you kind of get very caught up in the day-to-day running of your business. So I took some time out to actually complete it. I had a little bit of export knowledge, but it was 20 years old and it wasn't gained whilst I was actually a business owner. So I really didn't know if it was very relevant. And also that training that I'd had initially was relating to countries, much further afield, such as Nigeria, where it's not really a market for us. So I decided to complete the plan. And it was really easy to go through. I highly recommend it to everyone. It was, I thought it was going to be one of these really big, convoluted things that took forever to complete, and it didn't. What it kind of enabled me to do was actually sit down and actually write out all of the things that I wanted to do. It really highlighted all of the existing knowledge that I had, but also it highlighted the information I didn't know that I needed. So it really made me focus on where our strengths were and what we really needed to do. And so it actually laid out a proper mapped plan of action so that we could move forward. And it was very it was really good at kind of reinforcing the fact that I did know what I was doing, and that I wasn't just bumbling along, kind of making it up as I went forward. So I think sort of for small, certainly for small businesses like ourselves, you have very limited resources, and you get so tied up managing your day-to-day business, it can actually be quite difficult to plan ahead. Other than your overall business plan, I think you sometimes think you know what you need to do next, but then it almost becomes overwhelming to actually move that forward and to give you the confidence to take the next step. And that's what completing the plan actually did for me. There were resources within there. It brought up all of the little bits and pieces of information, such as, for instance, thinking about insurance, thinking about how you're going to get paid, and the differences in, for us doing wholesale, the fact that we were going from being paid immediately, because all of our money comes in up front when we're dealing with consumers, but going wholesale into a foreign market, obviously that is completely different. And thinking about whether we needed to actually have kind of extra cash flow in hand to actually manage that, and the cost of having the stock and the inventory in advance, and how long it was going to actually take to get to market, all of the shipping and all of the details. And it really goes through all of this quite in depth, not in depth to an extent where it takes you 3 weeks to complete, but it really made you think about it as you were going through. And it was really, really valuable. So having all of that online and being able to also fill that in as you go along. So it was the thing that I really like about the plan, and I still actually update it now, is that you can actually do it as and when you have time. There's no time restrictions on it. So even now, 3 years or 2-3 years later, I actually go back to that plan and update it about every 6 months. And that's really invaluable as a business owner, that it just sits there, and it's good to kind of revisit and kind of see how far you've come in that time as well, and see what goals you did achieve, or whether actually I totally forgot about that and we really need to readdress it. The other thing that I found really fantastic about it was the accountability it gave me. So again, as a small business, you don't really have anyone to answer to other than yourself, and so it's very easy to shuffle things to the back burner if it's inconvenient to you, or if you feel it. I think sometimes, certainly for me, if I feel like I don't really know what I'm about to do, I don't know much about it, and I feel a bit overwhelmed, it's very easy to put that to a side and think I'll deal with that when I've got a bit more time. And just having that plan written down just meant that I was more accountable. I was not accountable to the Institute of Export or to Leslie in any way, but it's just having it written and having it there means that actually I have taken action on that and I do want to follow up with this. And then to actually help with that more, you then get regular updates. So you get emails that drop in and say, have you updated this? You know, and so it kind of does inspire you to actually keep running with it and keep it as an ongoing thing. It's not a one-off thing, it's actually an ongoing plan to help you with your business. And then sort of the Institute of Export membership also means that you have that information at your fingertips from real experts who are there to listen and give you that advice that you'd struggle to find anywhere else. Next slide, please. So we were very lucky to be finalists in the RTA competition. So I just literally entered our plan into the competition and was absolutely amazed as a tiny business to be finalists. And you know, it was quite daunting at the time because it's not something that we'd ever really done before. But it was a fantastic experience. And it's actually, although we didn't win, just being in that final 7 just gave us so much confidence in the business. Well, you always believe that every other business is bigger than you and that you're the tiny little fish at the bottom. And, you know, it was a real confidence builder to know that even someone our size, you know, we were actually making really good inroads into the markets that we wanted, and our overall plan was really good and really solid. So after the competition, it kind of had knock-on effects onto what we did. So we're not very good at marketing, networking, sorry. But we actually then made contact with a local European contact who actually told us about some European grant funding. So as a small enterprise, we actually could apply for up to £10,000 of EU grant funding to actually help with exports. And what we actually used that for was to offset attending some really major US trade shows for us and UK trade shows, which although they were in the UK, actually the European distributors were also exhibiting at. Is kind of an international, it's a European trade show. So having that extra, just that little bit of extra capital to allocate to trade show costs made a huge difference to us as a business. You know, something, you know, if £3,000 when you're a small business is a huge amount of, can be a huge amount of money to you, and it can be the difference between, you know, being able to fly to the States and actually attend a conference or an exhibition and not, and you know, it's huge. So it also meant that that budget we could actually move over to our manufacturing, meaning that, you know, we could really go after the distributors that we'd been trying to get for 3 years. And it gave us the confidence to increase our stock levels to satisfy that distribution, which was something that we'd been worrying about. Next slide, please. So as a direct result of all of these things that have happened since the export competition, we've just agreed a deal with our US partner who licenses products from us, which actually means we can increase our minimum order quantities with our suppliers and gives us a more competitive edge with lower manufacturing costs overall. And after 3 years, we appointed a new European distributor in July, which we met at one of the trade shows. And that was actually rapidly followed by 2 others a month later in August. One of those was in Europe as well, and is a bit smaller. And then we have a new UK distributor as well. And all of these 3 have all had a significant impact on the business. And being able to go to that trade show in the States actually kind of really gave us a little bit of kudos in terms of how we represented ourselves and the fact that we were there and we were a serious business to contend with. So in the last 4 months of this year alone, our wholesale exports are actually up 400% on the whole of 2017, which is a crazy figure. And we anticipate this is going to continue. Really, it's only been we've only really had those relationships live for sort of 2 to 3 months, and we think that the business as a whole is going to really probably double its turnover in 2019. Our largest distributor is really happy with us. We were kind of listed as their #1 seller on their website at the moment, which is absolutely fantastic. Obviously for us, Christmas is the busiest time of year, which normally it's really quiet for us now because our Christmas period is much earlier than a lot of other businesses. But that's completely turned on its head, and Christmas sales have sort of been through the roof. So all 3 distributors are really, really keen to work with us and extremely happy with us, and you know, it's looking to be a very exciting 2019 for us. Next slide, please. So the tips that I've got for exporters for next year, whether you're a large company or a small company, just be bold. Don't assume that, you know, as a small business, that doors are closed to you because you don't have the knowledge. That knowledge is there. All you've got to do is look for it and ask the right people. And by taking part in the Export to Action Plan, that knowledge and that information is available to you very readily. You know, we're all slightly worried about Brexit, but you know, have confidence. We're very confident in our business. Obviously, our European market is the one that's really expanding hugely at the moment, and it's been really tough actually getting into Europe for us. So it's something that, you know, is really affecting us in quite a big way as a very small company. But you know, we're still very positive about it, and we're just trying to make sure that we are still presenting ourselves as a really valuable company to those distributors and to those retail outlets that want that wholesale business. And Brexit affects them too, and you know, they all want to work with us to find the right solutions. I'm sure we will. We in particular have a real threat to our industry at the moment with intellectual property and copyright theft. So don't underestimate the importance of that to your business, and that's something that's actually touched on in the Open to Export plan as well. So by being a member of the Institute of Export, you can actually get help with that directly on the website. IP theft is a real threat to all UK businesses, and I think in some ways that has a bigger impact on small businesses like us who can't actually afford those heavy legal fees to protect themselves. And I was really interested to see Leslie's slide earlier about the new membership that's been launched, that's actually going to involve all of that, and we'll be signing up to that for sure. So I think, you know, overall the impact of just completing this plan and going through all of this has just been massive for us as a business, and it's not something I anticipated at the time when I was completing it, but I'm certainly glad that we were involved, and we will remain to kind of complete it and be involved. So I'll hand back over to William.
Fantastic, thank you, Nikki. That was that's fantastic to hear just how much you've grown over the last few years, and the role the action plan's had, but also just how much you've got on with the job of doing exporting and really letting your business take flight. So it's really great stuff to hear. Thank you so much. Our last speaker of today is another inspiring exporter, one who spoke at the Institute's recent London Summit and a Queen's Awards winner in international trade. I'll let him introduce himself better than I ever will be able to. So over to you, Nik Ravenhall from Atom Brands.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for the kind introduction. I've been on mute in the background, and Nikki, it was so cool listening to all those things that you were talking about, your wee journey. I don't think it's very different from anyone else who's looking at export and just goes, how on earth am I supposed to take my products into the world? And I jotted down a couple of notes. You're 100% on point with your comments on planning. You know, planning, grown. It sounds like a huge task, and it was awesome for you to just point out that it doesn't have to be as complicated as people think it is. And I thought your points on finding the gaps in the knowledge are absolutely key, because this is where the Institute can help out, right? There's always someone there that you can ask, who can point you in the right direction. But the thing which really struck me the most was attitude. You know, it isn't the size of your business, it's the size of the fight in your company, and the will to get out there. I take a view that the world, it's our marketplace if we want to go out and play in it. And the other point that I loved was when you went to the trade shows, you know, people do business with people, and when you go out there and shake hands and you start to talk to distributors about their businesses, and you find what they're passionate about, and it seems to be the same thing you're passionate about. I believe export can be the easiest piece of business when you start connecting those values. So yeah, I'm sounding all jazzed up because it was just really cool hearing that. I don't know how many of you who are listening at the moment are in export right now, but it can be quite a lonely task when you're out in the road in foreign markets, and it's not often that you get to sit down with British exporters because we're always out on the road. So Nikki, thanks for sharing. A little bit on Atom Brands and what we do. I mean, someone's got to do it. Someone's got to make gin, and someone's got to make whiskey. So we put our hands up, and that's our task. That first we photo, that's me and my team, which is very small a year ago, out in Berlin, where we just launched in Germany. Yes, it's wine, it's not us, but we just come off a very successful trade show. Everyone's very happy, as you can tell, and business is booming. So we were 3 back then. I think we're a team of 15 now, and we kind of cut from the same cloth that Nikki is, which is let's go out and get the market. A summary on what we do, if we can go to the next slide. We make craft spirits. So essentially, our business is distilling and rectifying gin down here in England. Then we also source and bottle Scotch up in Scotland. At the heart of our business in the UK, we're actually an e-commerce business. So we're almost the Amazon version of liquor. So if you wanted a Google Master of Malt, that's our business here in Britain. And that allowed us to have a platform, almost a shop, so to speak, where we could create our own brands and see what would work and what could be successful with a very low entry cost. You know, if you've got your own web shop and you've got the ability to make a couple of bottles of gin and sell it on the web shop, if they sell out quick, then it's very simple. You make them again. If that keeps selling, then, oh, well, maybe we've got actually a brand here that we can play with. So we didn't start exporting until 2 years ago. And essentially, we took the products which we've been selling quite well in the UK, and the task was to take them out into the global marketplace. Next slide, please. We had 2 core products that we're focusing on. This is our Scotch whisky brand. As you can see, it really isn't what you'd expect from Scotch whisky. There's not anyone out there who's creating these funny zappy labels. This is really at the DNA and the heart of what we do. You know, we're a young company. Everyone in the business is very passionate about the liquid that we put into bottles, and rather than having a dusty, boring, very serious tone to our whiskies, we like to have a bit of fun. If we can roll to the next slide, please. Then the other bit of the business is gin. I don't think you can go to a small town or county in England at the moment without encountering a local craft gin. So we're at the forefront of that movement. We created bathtub gin 7 years ago, and we continue to make lots of fun, different, innovative gins. Last year, we were awarded with the International Wine and Spirits Gin Producer of the Year. So this is really, you know, this is at the heart of everything. At our global business, 60% of it is whiskey, the rest of it is gin. And the next bit I'll talk to you about is just a little bit of a story about, you know, looking at the products that we have. How did we take them into the global marketplace? What were the things that we kind of looked top line in our planning? What were the watch outs? And what were the things that we really focused on when we're going out into the markets to guide the conversations, to find the right customers, the right distributors, to make some decent business. So if we can roll over. Yep, that's where all of us live, planet Earth, giant marketplace, lots of cultures, drinking habits, currencies, shipping, logistics, packaging rules, compliance. It is, on the outside, a very confusing place to think, how do I take my brands to market? I think one of the things that new exporters, or even current exporters, underestimate and that is the skill set for distributors and importers who sit on the other side of that export equation. When you start working or looking into the global marketplace and not knowing where to go, in every market in the world, there's going to be an importer who knows all the details about how to bring your product into market. So it really just becomes a task of sitting down with the plan, not being afraid of not having that information, reaching out and trying to having a think, like some critical thinking about what are the things which can help me guide my decisions to take my brands to market. If we roll over. So when I sat down a couple of years ago, the first thing that I actually looked at before even going to the global marketplace was, let's look internally. What is it with us as a business? What is it with our brands? What is it with what we do? What are the things which are the essential core elements to our business? So first and foremost, on the left, of course, we start with our products, the gins and the whiskies. That's our DNA. The other piece here, I mentioned that we won the UK Gin Producer of the Year. We're making extremely high quality products. So already, I'm setting the tone for the conversations that I want to have with our partners. We're looking for partners who know how to work with whiskey, partners who know how to work with gin, but then also partners who understand the value of quality and what quality means. Each of our brands, they have a story. And the importance of stories these days is really about building value in your proposition to market. So there's no real point in my world to go to market and say, here's something that we'll try and undercut your local products with, because there's very little value in that. One of the things I think is important to respect is not only does the business that you own or work in have to make the right margin to keep itself alive, but also your partners need to be in that position too. So the power of storytelling, the power of building a brand, those are all the things which will trade someone up from, taking a plastic supermarket labeled bottle of gin off the shelf, or then taking something which has been locally crafted by a family business for 100 years. So if you don't have your stories ready, especially in my space, then it's very hard to demand the value that you're asking for on your products. So that was an important piece to connect to the quality and then also to the liquid. I guess you can hear by my funny accent, I'm not from Britain. There's one thing that I have learnt in the last 2 years, even before that Britain itself has got an enormous cachet in export markets for quality, especially in the world of spirits. So, I've got that number there, Britain pounds. I'm really trying to show keeping the value in the heritage and the place of origin of where products come from, and being a British brand, it really counts. So these were the kind of the four things that I strung together in my mind, that if I was out there looking for people, looking for potential partners, did they get these pieces of my world? Did they understand what I was selling? Did they understand the quality? Do they have the ability to tell our stories further? And do they have a connection with UK? Did they get what Britain was about? And the other is the flip side of this, is there's a little pound sign there. And when I'm thinking about the bottom line, I feel like as an exporter, you should always be thinking about your partner's bottom line. And if you can make both of those things work, then you've got some good business to be had. Next slide, please. So taking these ideas to market, it was, well, where do I export to? I think you can look at market data and try and figure out, okay, is there a gap in the market for me here? Is there a gap in the market for me there? There's other more practical things. So being based in the UK, we've got a fantastic market on our doorstep. Europe is our largest trading partner. So instead of looking so far afield, because we could get in and out of Europe very quickly, we started in Europe. Once we started to get traction in Europe and opening up markets and finding the right distributors, we started to get through those first teething problems with export, which every export business has. You might get a shipping thing wrong, or you might miss a compliance, or just those little bits and pieces. Then we started to look to go further afield. The next step, USA, was also quite a logical next step for us, because speaking English to English, being able to change emails, be on the same page, and work with a like-minded culture who understands business negotiations in the same way we do, made that a gentle next step coming up from Europe. And then we've now gone further afield. So we're into Asia, Africa, and we're into very complicated markets, which do have very different business practices to us. So really what I'm talking about here is, it can be helpful or even useful to focus on the markets closer to home. You don't have to spend so much time on the road. You're in the same time zone, so you're not having meetings at ridiculous hours. If something's wrong, it's relatively easy to fix it with a phone call or a market visit, or to send stock away. And I really recommend that as a good way of moving forward before starting to branch out into other places. Next slide. This little slide I've got here, for those of you who are not watching it, what I did in part of our market research was, there's always going to be someone who's playing in your product space who has a similar value or skill set to you. And if they're out in a market and they're doing well, then there's probably a market which is a good market to consider entering. When you're a small exporter or a new exporter, opening up completely new markets where your product is fresh to category, people haven't seen it before, there are first mover advantages to making that a thing, but then there's also huge amounts of costs and difficulty. How do you teach people in this new market about what it is that you're trying to sell? We looked at distributors who were selling Japanese whiskey, which didn't used to be a thing 10 years ago. Now you find Japanese whiskey in most whiskey drinking nations now. We also looked at distributors who were very good at selling Fever-Tree back in the day when Fever-Tree was 2 or 3 times the market price of Schweppes. Back then, Fever-Tree was the very first tonic water to say, hey, we don't have to be in a big plastic bottle and have lots of sugar. We can have fresh natural botanicals. So we looked at both of those innovative products which are in our space, and thought, well, if we find a market where Fever-Tree is doing well, then that's probably a good market to go and find a home for our gin. If we see a market where Japanese whiskey is doing well, then that's probably a place where we can talk about our high-end, free, relatively expensive, high-quality whiskeys. So just a little lesson here is see what your competitors or cross-category people are doing, where you can just borrow insights and learnings. Next one. Next slide, please. And then the slide that I'm on now is just a picture of all the markets that we've been into. So, just following those very simple rules of understanding our values and self, finding the markets where there are partners who understand what we work with, and a proven track record on similar or like products. We've been out on the road pretty much for the last 2 years. So I'm just thinking of my team and myself. Over the last 4 weeks, we've been in Shenzhen, Shanghai, Beijing, Tokyo, Taipei. We've got crew have just come back from Chicago. All of these markets have been opening up for us in a very short time, but we've kept the same discipline and focus on the values, which is taking our brands to a market where it is proven that brands similar to us are working, finding the right people who know how to work in that space according to our values that we have internally to our products, and then just trying to build a healthy, margin positive business for both businesses together. If we go to the next slide. At the moment, just as a summary, we're now in 60 markets around the world, which is just crazy. We've got 15 people in our team now, and that number that I've got on the board, which is £6 million of revenue, we'll clear 10 at the end of this year. I'd like to say that export is a complicated, hard, and difficult thing, but I really don't believe it is. I think it's something that anyone can do if they take the time out of their day, do that planning, like Nikki said. Don't let the day-to-day take away the thoughts of looking out there for other markets around the world. You'll find distributors and partners who'll be like-minded with your business, who will be more than willing to help grow your business because you're adding something to theirs. So yeah, that's my blabble for today. I'm not sure if that was helpful, but thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. That was fantastic once again, and I think it's a real great insight into partly some of the adventure that's involved in export, all those markets and countries you get to go out to, but also just the real importance of having a plan and being bold and doing it properly. So that's all great stuff. So we're now going to try and do a quick Q&A. It won't take too long because it's a Friday afternoon. But we'll do a couple of questions. So if you want to ask a question, you can use the control panel to the right-hand side of your screen. The first question I'll ask to Leslie. And just a question in terms of if you're using a Buccaneer package, the new Buccaneer package, is that something you can use then to then enter the export action plan competition, or are they two separate?
Yes, certainly you can use it to enter the competition. Obviously, you will have a certain advantage because you'll have gone through it with a professional or one of our trade advisors. But yes, I'm sure that's a great idea to use it. So we'd welcome any competition entries.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I mean, I suppose most businesses will go through the plans with a bit of advice anyhow. It's often the way. And then just a question for Nick and Nikki. You both mentioned obviously Europe as market for you, and a lot of people will obviously be asking at the moment, how are you preparing for Brexit? And I know Nikki slightly alluded to it, but yeah, what kind of steps are you guys taking towards preparing yourselves for any potential impact of Brexit? First of all, Nikki, then Nick. Nikki?
So, yeah, we really, the addition of our distributors has been really key to that. We'd been trying to get in a deal with a particular distributor for at least 3 years now, and this year, with obviously with Brexit in mind, that became really, really important to us this year, because we feel that having that European distribution in place now, it doesn't alleviate any of the issues, obviously, but it provides a cushion in that we're now already trading in that market rather than kind of almost going it alone. And the one thing that we are actually about to start doing, which may seem quite late to other businesses, but for us it's not, is that, especially, you know, more so this week where we're seeing the fluctuation of the pound so much, is that we are actually going to stockpile a small amount of inventory. We, as a small business, we obviously have to be quite careful with that because it ties up cash, you know, and we don't want huge amounts of stock sitting in a warehouse. But it's something that we are going to strategically do, certainly during the next 2 to 3 months, just so that we have that cushion there that can actually help us get over that March deadline. We are in a very, it's quite a challenging environment in our market. It moves very, very quickly, and the trends within that market are very, very fast moving. Whereas with Nick, you know, I'm sure his products have have longevity of those products. You know, those brands are going to be around in 10 years time, and you can, you know, he's building those whiskies and those particular brands within that. Our products are very short life, but in terms of kind of our market, I think we actually have an advantage. And one of the things Nick said that I really picked up on, and I agree completely with, is about quality and, you know, having that point of difference. And that's certainly been part of our success. And I think that will actually help us kind of overcome most of those challenges. We are, although our products aren't unique, the design of our products is unique. And I think that's important for every business, is that you do have that USP that sets you apart from everyone else.
And Nick, you too.
Our plans for Brexit. We've done a few. So the first one is we're trying to mitigate the risk to the business. Europe is right around 30% of our export markets at the moment. We've upweighted our focus into Asia and this year, as also, you know, we've actually copped some stuff from Trump with his trade sanctions. There's been some hurt which has come in on some of the bourbon brands that we're working with. So, you know, Asia is a friendly place for us to trade in terms of whiskey. So we've spent some time out there, as you heard when I was talking with the markets that we've just been visiting, and we're pushing the growth a lot harder in that part of the world. So that's the first thing that we're doing. And then the other piece is we've sat down with each of our EU partners and talk through what they believe to be the growth for next year, what they think are the core lines for our business. And when we get to end of March, if we're not in a very happy place, what we will have succeeded in doing is shipping a fair amount of stock over into Europe. We'll pay for our own warehousing over there, and then our customers will forward purchase on some of that stock, and then we'll also, on the balance of the stock, give them extended credit terms. So we're trying to make it so when we're hitting those periods of uncertainty, that everyone can kind of just not worry about the onward knock effects. So, you know, when we're trying to sell stock overseas and then try and hold a global retail price or a European retail price, and the pound is up and down like a yo-yo, you know, how do you manage that? And our partners don't want that uncertainty either. So we've been benchmarking the currency as well, and trying to give them incentives to work with us. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. I think so. I wanted to just open to Leslie as well. Leslie wants to make a quick comment as well.
Well, the only thing I wanted to add to all of this is we've been working with HMRC on a project to help train people on the customs documentation and procedures that are needed. There's a grant that's attached to it all, and I encourage everyone to look at the website under the grants. These are the main course is called Customs Procedures and Documentation. It's a one-day course to help everybody to understand exactly what their responsibilities are going to be. And there's 180,000 businesses that are trading with the EU that will have to start treating it as an export market. So although I'm pretty confident that both Nikki and Nik know exactly what they're doing, please do look at the site and see if there's any training on there. It gives you up to 50% off, 70% if you're a small business. It's well worth looking into, and especially if you're a member of ours, you'll get £100 off it anyway. So it's really worthwhile just finding out what your responsibilities are, and we're urging everyone to try and look at these courses. There's going to be around about 100 of them that are going online for January through to March to get ready. So please do get ready for Brexit. You know, we just don't know what we don't know. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, and I will make sure to include links to all of that in the aftermath to the webinar. And we are also doing some Brexit webinars at the start of next year, which will talk a little bit more about what the IOE is doing there too. One last question is in from John, who's firstly very thankful to the speakers, but he's also asked, what is the best source for locating an international distributor? Nik, do you want to speak to that first, and then Nikki briefly, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
It's a good question. There's a sneaky little trick that I look at. So I know my market very well. I've worked in whiskey for a long time. You know, when you know you trade, you know the people who are similar to you in outlook and value, making quality products, and quite often I'll just look, well, where are they and who are they working with? If the relationships are close enough, which quite often they are, it's a phone call or a beer to say, hey, I see you guys are in Canada. This is a real example right now. We reached out to some friends in another distillery. We have no Canadian distribution. We'd love to be there. We're out for a beer and say, look, we'd love some help with Canada. Could you introduce us to your partner? How's that business going? What's it performing? Are you enjoying it? What's the relationship like? That to me, that's one really easy way of doing it. whiskey is quite a friendly trade. So if you're in a more cutthroat industry, another way is just going through other people's websites and businesses to see where they are distributed around the world. It is quite a useful tool. For us, there's a lot of market data which is available, which is through industry numbers. We've got a register called International Wines and Spirits Register, which will always have the distributed data linked into the numbers and categories. So, for example, you might see Scotch whisky priced from 30 to 50 euros. You'll see the splits on volume versus product, and then you'll see who's moving them. And I'm sure that would be, if that, I don't know which industry you're in, but that's always a nice place to start. So there's lots of easy ways you can do that from your desk to start looking for those things. We do have one rule when we do start talking to distributors, and we try and not get blinded by the bells and whistles and all the things that you outwardly suddenly think, wow, they're the guys for me. One of the key things we judge our partners on is there actually a personality fit between us and them? Do I want to pick the phone up to these guys every single day? Do they want to talk to me? And can we have a laugh together? I mean, when you're working long distance and you're working cross-culturally, stuff goes wrong. And if you don't have that, I feel if you don't have that empathy in that relationship, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And I've been through that a couple of times where I've gone, wow, this is going to be a big win. I really don't like that guy on the other end of the phone, and it is because there is an ethos or a values mismatch, and it's not a recipe for success. So a couple of little things on how to find distributors and a little lesson in how to keep them.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Nik says there. And certainly for us, again, kind of looking at what your competitors are doing, and trying to find the people that they're actually working with. If you know your market really well, I think you would know kind of where to go and look. Certainly for us, actually attending the trade shows is really key. Because even though ours is quite a small market and there's actually a limited number of distributors worldwide, there is still a lot out there that I'm not aware of. And really, going to the trade shows, actually, you don't necessarily always have to exhibit, I think you, certainly our trade shows, those distributors are there, and maybe go to an international trade show, to actually find different ones. And again, going back to kind of what Nik said about don't always jump through hoops thinking you've struck gold when you actually find a distributor that wants to take you on. That it can be quite hard work if you actually have the wrong distributor. And like Nik, we had not an international distributor but a UK one several years ago, going back 5 or 6 years, and literally they just didn't perform at all for us, and it was like we had a non-existent distributor basically. So there are pitfalls to it, and it is about finding the right fit. And don't expect things like that to happen overnight. One lesson that I learned is that I found a particular company I really wanted to work with 3 years ago, approached them at a trade show. We had a little bit of dialogue afterwards, but they basically said, now's not the right time. And at the time I thought they were fobbing me off, and it was like, oh yeah, you're a small company again, the whole big fish little fish thing, thinking, oh, we're too small for them. And then at each subsequent trade show that we've been to, they've been there, and I was really pleased in February when I actually went over there and I said, I don't think you remember me, and they said, yeah, we do. Your products are still there on the table, it's just not the right time. And so we've had 3 or 4 knockbacks with them where they said no, but I wasn't prepared to let it go. And then we kind of secured a UK distributor, had to completely redo all our product catalogue. So because we did that, I then actually forwarded it on to them, and I just thought, well, I've got nothing to lose, I'll forward it over. And literally the next morning I had a phone call saying, yeah, absolutely the right time, let's get you on board. So don't give up. If there's someone that you really want to work with, keep going for it. I ultimately think you know who the best fit for your business is, and even if you sign up with someone else in the meantime, don't give up on that one company that you think is really going to help you.
Yeah, that's stunning advice. It happens all the time, right? You keep you know who you want to work with, and people who are really good at what they do, they usually don't have that much time to onboard new stuff because everyone's knocking at the door. And I'd like to add to what you're saying, Nikki. It's that human. There's a human element to export where if people see at all the trade shows and you always come up and you always say hello, you always be respectful, you always pay an interest, you get remembered and you get to be seen as someone who is taking your own product seriously. We've encountered that before. We were late to the markets in Europe with gin. By the time we got to Spain, which is the world's largest gin market, that market had been in boom for 10 years. We arrived just as it started to decline. So, when we're going to the partners we wanted to work with, quite often they say, well, why do we need another gin? And of course, we play all of the things which I was talking about, quality, et cetera, et cetera. And they say, look, we see it, but we've already got 3 or 4 gins in our portfolio which do the same thing. One of the tactics that we took was we went to the ones that we felt if we could get in with them, they could deliver a rapid return on the business because of their power in the marketplace. We said, look, just give us a chance. What we'll do is if you take on a small order, we'll come over and we'll do the work. We'll go out and support your sales team. We'll go and do the tastings. We'll go and meet the buyers. You don't have to allocate the time to it. We'll take time out of our work in the UK to come and support your market to get it up off the ground and get it moving forward. And quite often a distributor will look at that, and I don't know if this works in other trades, but they'll look at that and go, well, if those guys are going to do that, well, let's let them have a crack. And then if your product's good enough, then it's going to work. And then all of a sudden, you're doing business. Now, when I look at our business in those 60 markets, probably 30% of those markets we were in, we had to enter that way. We had to go out there and say, look, we are tiny fish in the spirits world, but we think we can do this. So that's another way of getting through.
Great stuff. Thank you both. I think we've run over slightly, but yeah, that's all very useful advice. So thank you, Nikki, Nik, and Leslie again for a fantastic Q&A and a great webinar too. Yeah, thank you everyone.
All good.
So yeah, now thank you. So now I'm going to wrap up and looking ahead to 2019 quickly. The Institute of Exports and International Trade has announced a bunch of new training courses for businesses looking to advance their exports and prepare for Brexit, including several courses on customs declarations and procedures, customs classifications and tariff codes, rules of origin, and much, much more, as you mentioned. Furthermore, you can apply for government funding for many of our courses. This funding is designed to support businesses who are or will be required to make customs declarations in the near future, which is obviously a big talking point around Brexit. So information can be found about our training at export.org.uk/training, and there's more information throughout the export site as well. As discussed, we are currently running our 10th Export Action Plan competition. This is a great chance for SMEs in the UK to win £3,000 towards their export plans. The competition is being sponsored by Bibby Financial Services, and the deadline to enter is January 25th next year. Information about the competition can be found on the website, and we definitely encourage you to enter. It's a great opportunity, as Nikki alluded to earlier, and we'll be letting you know some final details about the final itself soon. Our next webinar and our first of 2019 will be on January 16th, and this will be the first of a few sessions we'll be running giving advice about how you can prepare for Brexit, a topic we may be going back to a few times in 2019, who knows. This session in particular will be talking about customs and VAT, and details can be found at opentoexport.com/webinars. As always, please do take our exit survey to let us know what you thought of today's webinar and to give us any suggestions for improvements or future topics. And finally, we'd like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a cracking New Year. But for now, goodbye.